this is really something that we would like to do like kind of in privacy, and let the people that join us today like really can speak freely, so it's not going to be recorded. First, I would like to thank everyone that really helped us for advertising. A big thank you for everyone that did really a great job in communication, because we succeed to have a lot of participants from different cities in the UK, from different countries. So this is actually an international event. And at the beginning, we didn't imagine that it will be that much spread. So thank you so much for everyone that helps for advertising. I would like to thank all the organizers as well. So the people part in the Postdoc Network and in the Biopharma Network. So we will talk a bit about those two networks in a couple of minutes. And a big, big, big thank you for the presenters. So thank you so much to be here, and to thank you for kindly accepting to speak about your career road and give some advice to the postdocs and other PhDs that are here today. So just to start with some rules. So this is the boring part, I'm sorry. So this is a live event. So it will be great if everyone can stay mute. I think so far it's going well, so that's great. Like that, we don't have any background noise. The thing that would be great is to have the camera on when the speaker are speaking, and also all the speakers, please stay on for the Q&A part. And for the participant, if you want to ask question, we would like to do something as a discussion as much as we could. So it would be great if you can, when you have a question, write in the chat functionality, I have a question. And after all the presentation, I will name you and you will be able to ask your question. You can also have your camera on during the time you are asking. And after, it will be like discussion more than me just reading all the question. But if you are not feeling with that, you can write your question, but it will be great if you can ask in person your question. Here we go. So we will start with the presentation of the Postdoc Network. So can you all see my screen? Yeah, all right. So what is the London Postdoc Network? So this network actually is quite new. We started to found this network a couple weeks ago. The founders are Jean-François, Léa Mukul, and me. So I think you can see some of them with the camera on. You can maybe, yeah, there we go. So they are this is the founding teams. We are actually recruiting. So if you are interested to joining us and do some event with us, please contact us. So you all got my emails, I guess. So don't hesitate. It will be great to have some other people who will be interested to create this network with us. So our aims is to provide postdoc in Greater London area with career development opportunity through some events like this one. So networking events, career day events, soft hard skills workshops. We also aim to contribute to postdoc-related events, so at the national and international level, and of course, share them with all our members. So that's why it's important that you follow us. The next big event that we are organizing is the National Postdoc Appreciation Week event that will be in the UK. This time will be online in next September. So if you're interested, follow everything we will share about it. And also share any job opportunities that will be suitable for postdocs through our partnership. So we are at the moment on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. So don't hesitate to follow us, and we will have a website soon. So this event was organized with another network. So I will let Karina to present the London Biopharma Network.
Thanks, Clarice. So, hi, everyone. I first just wanted to start by thanking you all for coming. I've been really excited about this event all week, and I really can't wait to hear what our speakers are going to share with us today. So what is the London Biopharma Network? So it's a networking group that I started with Elodie Leliard and Stephanie last year, and the goal of our network is to encourage connection and collaboration between London-based professionals working in pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, healthcare, and academia. We wanted it to be quite an inclusive group. Another one of our aims is to share knowledge and ideas through networking and careers events. So even during lockdown, we've been holding Zoom calls and like online we did like pub quizzes as well to bring a bit of fun into your lockdown. We also post job opportunities and graduate schemes if we become aware of any of those at work. We do have quite a lot of students who join the group who are looking for careers in pharmaceuticals, so we like to work with them. And we also like to share any interesting news in biopharma. So these can be, really relevant ones about company mergers, or even some really weird and wacky ones, which you particularly find within the biotech space. So you can see down there, we've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and also an Instagram page. So if anyone on this call be interested in finding out more, feel free to get in contact with me and join any of those groups below. Thank you, Clarice. Back to you.
Thank you. So now we'll start by the first speaker. So I will ask everyone to turn the camera off, please, except Christina, of course, because she will be the first speaker. Thank you. And I will let you present your presentation. Thank you, Christina.
Christina, can you please unmute yourself?
Sorry. I didn't realize I needed to do that before I gain control. But anyways, hi, everybody. Sorry, let's go back. Nice to all meet you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today about my career path. I found this picture, sorry, I've already clicked the first animation, so there we go. I've done an undergraduate. I found this picture and I thought it was really good to demonstrate basically what it's like to have a career in science. I'm sure we've all experienced different things, such as what I'm about to explain. I do come from quite a diverse background in that I grew up in South Africa, so you might hear the slight accent, and then moved to the UK to continue my studies. So as I mentioned, I started with an undergraduate BSc in Natural Environmental Sciences. I, found all my old graduation pictures to really prove that I did it. Followed by a postgraduate. I did an honours in South Africa. You have to do an honours and then an MSc before you can proceed to a PhD. It's a little bit different to the UK. So I did a 2-year MSc as well, and this was in HIV vaccine development. And this was fascinating, and I really enjoyed it, but I always felt that it was doing research in a third world country where, obviously there are bigger issues in the country, and so there wasn't a lot of funding, and you always kind of were competing with the, first world countries. So this is when, sorry, we're going to have a graduation picture from that too. Lovely. So this is when I decided it was time to move to the UK. This was in 2008. I have an uncle that lives here, and it was a good opportunity for me to come. And to be honest, it wasn't to continue any academic career, because after doing, all of that and finishing my master's, it kind of was I was a little bit over academia. So I thought, let me travel. I'm young. Let me do my thing. So there we go. Moved to the UK, did my little travel stint, and actually thought before I decide to do a PhD or anything else, let me see what it's like to work in the industry and stuff. So I actually got a job as a research assistant at King's College Hospital in the Institute of Liver Studies, where I helped isolate human hepatocytes for transplantation. And this was an incredible job. It was exactly the reason I moved countries, because it was really cutting edge, state-of-the-art kind of research that I wasn't exposed to in Africa, and it was fascinating. So I spent 2 years there. I wore this lovely GMP getup. It was good fun, and it was really a great time in my life. Saying that, though, it was in the height of the recession, and so there wasn't a lot of funding for research going on. And to be honest, nobody really took me seriously without a PhD. So if in all honesty, when people say, like, why do you want to do a PhD? it was purely for career progression. So this is basically what happened is I wasn't able to get any funding to continue that project. So I found a funded PhD. So moving back down the chain, where so it was back to King's College, London. So this was now at the Guy's campus, where I did my PhD in endothelial cells and the effect of insulin on them. And so this, it was quite a change to kind of go from kind of work as a research assistant back to one where you are accountable for your actions, in the sense that, it's not Monday to Friday. Not that the GMP position was Monday to Friday, but it kind of felt that, it was slightly different in that sense, but it was great. It was meant to be a 3-year PhD, full disclosure here, but I'll explain how there was a slight delay in that. Basically, no exciting pictures of the PhD other than 100-plate cell extracts. But as I said, this is where things kind of took a little turn in that in 2013, my sister wanted to open a business. We have a family business back in South Africa in the beauty industry, doing all beauty related things, and one of them was laser hair removal. When I moved over to the UK, at this time we also discovered that there wasn't the beauty industry, or the kind of the aesthetic industry at that point, wasn't quite on the level, or the customer service level that we experienced in South Africa. And so we noticed there was a gap in the market where it wasn't just this there wasn't a customer service focused company out there for this kind of tech treatment. So she opened the business. I said, look, I'm doing my PhD. It's not the best time for me to do this with you, but I'll help where I can. And so in the final year of my PhD, she had to go on maternity leave. And so that's when I needed to become the managing director of the business. And so the last 2 weeks of my PhD write-up was when my niece arrived, and so I took over, and that delayed me finalizing and submitting my PhD. But we got there in the end, and I did finally get the PhD, which is great. And I worked pretty much solidly in the clinic for the full year of 2014, which was great. It was such a nice change of pace. It was nice to be customer facing, doing something that achieved results. You worked hard. The clients were happy, the bank balance went up, and it was really nice to get that instant gratification. Whereas obviously with the PhD, there's a lot of failure and dealing with that. Sorry, I do talk a lot, so I'm going to try and move on because I know we've got a time limit. So essentially that was great for a year, but I did actually miss science after a year, surprisingly. And I wanted to find the bridge between the science and the business. And so a brilliant position came up, which was actually a postdoc in my current lab now. So full disclosure, I haven't quite left academia. I'm actually employed full-time as a postdoc, and running the business as my side hustle. My sister is back on board. Obviously, I can't do this alone, so she's the primary director now, but I do support her a lot. And so, and now I basically live this double life. And so that's my story to you, is that it doesn't have to be an either or. It's really nice to know that that there are other options, and that it's kind of like a safety net. It's nice knowing that, if science doesn't really work out, I still have this, and yeah. So I've just got some pictures basically of it. We opened in, as I said, 2013. We were it was a bit crazy that we signed a 3-year lease in the center of Bond Street. This was opening night. That's my sister in the middle with the blonde hair. And then on the right, that's my other sister from South Africa. So as I said, it was a family-run business. And we were there, basically what we did is we had one room within a wellness center, and we ran up our small business independently of this through that, and it was crazy. We didn't have any clients on our books. We bought this very expensive laser machine, and we were there for 6 years, and then we are now expanding. So, well, we did expand last year, which is great. So we outgrew the space. We wanted to expand. Our clients were asking for more treatments. And so we moved to, we rebranded because we wanted to take on new treatments. So instead of just being Pulse Laser Clinic, we are now Pulse Laser Aesthetic Clinic. We moved to Wigmore Street, so a little bit more affluent than where we were, which is lovely. We're right behind Selfridges, so if anybody needs us, we're there. We built our own clinic. We've got 3 treatment rooms now. We've taken on more staff. we've got the latest technology, and we've bought new technology to do this. So rushing through this and that, saying, I'm just going to release my control, that, you know, it's really nice. So how I work in the business now is that I do my I do the laser after hours naturally, because I've got a team that can do it during working hours. So I do one night a week possibly, and then 1 or 2 weekends a month. And it's really nice to have the best of both worlds. And so this is why I enjoy it. And, you know, to be fair, both the science and, because they're of similar industries, I'm moving back, sorry. And that's it. So thanks very much. I am going to relinquish control back to, if I can get, there we go. Sorry, it keeps disappearing. There we go, lovely. So back to Clarice to
thank you.
And I'll...
Thank you so much, Christina. It was great. So you can see that finally you can be a postdoc and also doing something else in industry, like be the director of your own company. And now we will switch to a different career that Carolina will explain to you now. So up to you, Carolina.
Thank you. So I work as a molecular and cellular pharmacologist at Benevolent AI. So that is a company that does drug discovery. And it's a very unique company because it does a lot of AI-driven choices to look at new treatments, but also develops the drugs inside the company and does the clinical trials. So it goes through pretty much every single step of drug discovery, which is unique. Can you put the next one, please? So Clarissa, I don't have the control from these slides. If you can, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
So what I want to say is that career progression just looks like a linear on your CV. So every time I have to apply for the job, you have a very convincing story. I've done my undergrad in biology, and I had a BSc in biochemistry. I've done a master's in biochemistry and immunology, a PhD in immunology. Then I got a job offer in the UK. So I came to work at the Health Protection Agency as my job number one. It was a postdoc position, and I was looking at biology and differentiation of embryonic stem cells. Then I went to academia for a second position, and I stayed in academia for about 8 years. And I was working with neurodegeneration and neurodevelopment. And after that, I decided that I really want to apply my skills to help patients, and I started working for a CRO. So if you don't know, that's a contract research. That's a private, pretty much is in the private sector. It's a contract research organization. And what they do is, because pharma companies cannot have every single expertise in-house, sometimes they contract organizations that have a very particular area that they don't have the expertise in-house. So they subcontract the work for private sectors like this. So I was working one, they use Alzheimer's as a drug disease. And we had these IPS models, and pharma companies would approach us and would say, we have a bunch of drugs we want to test. How would you advise us to do it? We'll kind of look at which experiments the company could do, and if that fit with their drug discovery pipeline, then we will go. And when I interviewed for my job number 4, I told them, look, I'm enjoying this, but I want more. I want to really have an exposure of the drug discovery as a whole. And this is very easy to put in a CV and kind of make a story that makes sense. So you can go to the next one, please. So the only linear thing I had on my career was my undergrad to my PhD. Every single step, I was 100% sure that's what I want next. When I finished my BSc, I knew I wanted to do a master's, and I knew what I wanted to do. When I finished my master's, I knew I wanted to do a PhD. When I finished my PhD, I'm like, oof, I need a job. And I knew I wanted a job in science. So the thing that drove my job kind of approach was, what do I want to study? What do I feel like interested in? And that was the main weight for my next step. Money was not the driven part. Obviously, you want to get paid, but that was not the decision factor on that. It was really what kind of area do I want to work with? And at the time was stem cells. So the big jump was moving countries, was adapting to a different sort of way of working, while you're way more accountable for what you bring in the table. So you have deadlines and you have all this non-negotiable work packages that you have to deliver. And that was a big change, but it was okay. It was different and I was doing something I enjoyed. My job number 2, it was, oops, sorry, can you go back? Thank you. My job number 2 was going back to academia because I thought I'm doing a lot of work, it's very superficial. I want to have some depth of knowledge into something, and I felt I needed, because people tells you and they hammer that in your head that you have to have big publications to do anything in your life, which is not true. But I believe that, so I went back to academia and say I need to get those publications. And I stay as a postdoc for 8 years. Mainly because I love the place, I love the people. The person that was the principal investigator, he was wonderful and he was a great mentor. And I had a lot of freedom to do the research I wanted. But it gets to a point where you say, okay, I can be a postdoc forever, which is not a problem. If that's what you want to do, you shouldn't let anyone put you off if that's what you want to do. But the more applied research I did, the more I wanted to see what I was doing in a patient, but also I wanted different things in my life. At that point, I wanted job security. I want to have more money. I want to travel. I don't know, do I want to do that forever? I was a bit saturated with this thing of working a lot for a paper. The paper is not, so the paper was fulfilling at the beginning. At the end, it's like, I don't care anymore. I'm not doing that to have a paper. I really want that to go forward. And I start to think like, this is really hard. Do I really want to keep doing this? So I've actually researched a lot of other careers that I could do with my science degree. So I did a little course on intellectual property, and I talked to a lot of patent attorneys and I explored that. If you don't know, there is some consultancy agencies that you can be part of, and you can put your name on and show like your areas of expertise, and you sign a confidential agreement with them. And if they get clients on your area of expertise, they pay you per hour. And that was fun. Then I thought maybe I can do a charity as a scientific advisor, and I talked to some people that have done that, but I was not convinced that was for me. Then I thought about a clinical research associate because, well, I like to see science being applied to patients, and that was something that was lacking on my PhD, on my postdoc as well. Then I thought about publishing because a lot of people told me maybe you want to go into a editorial position if you really like science, but if you don't want to be in the lab. But it turns out that I really like being in the lab, so that was done for me. And I've done some courses to learn like new languages. So I've learned R and I've learned Python. And I thought for a moment that maybe I could become a data scientist and solve some problems with medical research. So that was a path that I explored, and I talked to a lot of people on that. And this is something that I still think about until today. I've done some online courses on project management because I thought maybe I want to go into project management. That's a lot of companies now that run with project managers, including big pharma, small pharma, charities, you know, like the Catapult, if you know what I'm talking about. The UK has a consortium to help to translate medical research, and they do have project managers, and it felt really interesting. Then I talked to some people that left the industry and done MBAs and started their own business with or without an MBA. Maybe an MBA is something for me, and I start my own thing. And at the end, I thought with starting a biotech, and I've looked into that. And my big jump from here was from postdoc, I went to work on this research contract organization. So He was a much more applied, he was driven towards drug discovery, but it was a very small part of the drug discovery kind of scenario. And I was really scared. And to be honest, when I was talking to people that have moved into lecture positions, and one of them that I thought was completely brilliant, she got a lecture position at Cambridge. And I told her, are you kind of scared? And she told me, you know what, I'm going to give a go. And I'm going to do whatever is the best. And if I don't succeed, then I don't succeed. I will try something else, but I need to try that. And with that approach, I said, okay, I'm really scared because people in academia tells you have to have papers, and then you pretty much locked into academic position if you've done a postdoc for too long, because you think that people in industry don't want to work with people that have been in academia for too long, which is a massive lie. They will, although they will hire you, and if they have a position that they think you really match, and they will train you. So if you think that you've been a postdoc for too long and you can't go back, yeah, you can do whatever. From job 3 to job 4, that was from a small CRO to a big drug discovery. That was the easiest step, because once you're in, you learn a new jargon, you know more people, you talk to more people, and that step towards a large industry was much easier. And where I am now is I'm really enjoying it. So I still do lab work, but I do a lot of discussions about drug discovery, what we'll be looking at. I'm part of 5-6 different projects, each in a different area. So my expertise is immunology and neurobiology, but I'm doing projects that are outside of this area. It is a very collaborative place, and you're exposed to a lot of expertise, and people really want to hear what you have to say. And everyone works at a very tight group, and I'm enjoying the environment a lot. And one thing, sometimes just because you're in a job that you don't enjoy doesn't mean you're not enjoying the career path that you have. So if you go to the next one, I want to say, stop comparing your career to other people, because people would say, oh, I'm here and I want to be a lecturer, and all these people are lecturers, all these people moved on, and that caused a lot of anxiety. So I know lots of very, very, very clever people that decide to take a break, that decided their personal lives were more important at that point, or that they decided that they really want financial reward more than anything, and they switch positions. And each person has a different set of personal and professional goals at different times in their lives. And when you start comparing yourself, you're really not on their shoes. So it's a bit silly to do that. Don't do that. Talk to people. Please talk to people, because you get inside of your head and you tell all these excuses and things you should be doing and things you shouldn't be doing, or it's too late, and you overthink. And when you talk to someone that's outside, they just say, this is in your head, please stop. That doesn't make any sense. So don't feel scared to talk to other people. Talk about the career plan you want to follow, talk about their career path, because every single person that I had an idea like how their career progressed. You look at LinkedIn and you look like these steps, and then I talk to them, and some of them would tell me like, I never thought I'd be in this job because I did this. This is not on LinkedIn. This is not on their CVs. This is kind of their story, and is very different from what they put on their CV. Talk about the job position, and the same job position in different companies can be something very different. And I think your job is dictated by the culture and the people you interact with. If you have a good people around you, you're going to enjoy your choice. Talk to recruiters, how they screen candidates for a position. It was super useful. Things that I thought were really important on my CV, the recruiters just laugh and say like, we don't care about that. And things that I thought were not important, they told me this is really important. So you can approach someone and say, I'm interested on this. Do you have something in this area? How do you screen people for that? Find mentors. I had a brilliant manager as my postdoc, and he is still my mentor. If I have to discuss career progression, I still kind of drop him an email, come have a coffee. I talk to other junior lecturers in my center and other people in pharma, and they all been super supportive to talk to me about my career and how they see things outside of my own head, and it's really, really useful. And obviously, no one will tell you what to do or do the work for you, but they would definitely tell you their opinion, and that is really, really good information. Learning new skills is not an option. I'm so happy I've learned R, and I've learned some coding, and I've learned Python, because all my job interviews, they ask me, what have you learned recently? And the more I learn about automation and about AI, the more I think if I haven't a clue about those things, it will be really hard for me to talk to people that I have to interact on a daily basis. So that was a plus for me. I attended to every single event, course, seminars, everything that I could. I drop messages to people on LinkedIn and say, look, I'm really interested in this position. Can you tell me more about it? Things like that. And I was really scared to apply for jobs because rejection is awful. And I didn't apply to enough jobs. And someone just told me, it's not that it's hard. It's just you're not applying to enough job positions to actually have a chance. So most job positions, people put a very broad kind of job description, and people don't really know what they want until they get to see all the candidates and think this one will fit better. And it's really the timing that the company is versus the pool of candidates that are being interviewed while you're being interviewed, and you get the best fit, and they choose that. And I'm really glad I was not chosen for any of the jobs that I applied after my postdoc, because otherwise I wouldn't be in this job that I'm now, that I'm enjoying so much. So it was good to be rejected by them. And also I got some interview skills. It's hard, but you learn. That's how it is. Can you go to the next one, please? So I want to say it's I had to some of those networking events, and some people were from academia, and they told me, and to everyone that was watching, it's really hard to get a job in academia. It's really hard. It's really hard. You have to have this and that and all these qualifications and papers and connections. And at the end, I just say, like, I want to do another undergrad. I want to start it again. It was depressing. So one person on that career panel that was from Bayer, actually, he got up and said, I want just to tell you something. From everyone that has a degree and a PhD, you are, compared to the entire population, statistically, it's a very low chance that you'll be unemployed. It's less than 2% the level of employment on people that have a PhD. So that's something they offer you, and just go for it. Don't feel like anything will hold you back. You'll get your path, though. That's all I...
Thank you so much, Carolina. You actually explore so many different options. This is really inspiring. And yeah, thank you for this really like kind, I will say, take-home message, like really hope message. So now we move on to the next speaker. So Chloe, are you connected? Yeah, you are. Perfect.
Yes, I am connected. Hopefully you can see me now. I can't see myself, but that's probably better for everyone.
We can see you. We can hear you well. Thank you. I'll let you present.
Hi, so my name is Chloe Rose. I'm currently a strategy and operations manager at Novartis, but if you asked me when I first started my undergraduate in pharmacology, I definitely wouldn't have said that was where I was going to end up. So to start off with, I've always been academically learning in Southampton. It's where I moved in 2010 to do my BSc in pharmacology. And quite frankly, after 2 years, the ability to have a gap year, not an intercalated year in industry, really appealed to me. I wanted to go out, get some life experience and find out what actually happens behind the scenes. We've learned so much about drugs, but you don't actually see the application. You know, you're that far back that you can't see what's going on. So I think I must have honestly applied to about 10, 12, 20 different positions and interviewed for 5 to get this one. And I ended up at GlaxoSmithKline in Uxbridge as a clinical study manager. So that was the term at the time, but the reality was it's a project manager position, and it was in clinical pharmacology, science and study operations. And it was specifically in phase 1 to 2B, respiratory and immunoinflammation. And in that year, it gave me a very big taste of what industry was about. I made sure I could see everything I possibly could. I visited the animal labs. I visited the compound chemistry to see where they actually made the drugs in Stevenage. I just made sure that I absolutely experienced everything. And I think one thing that you don't know when you're studying is the different roles within pharma. There was no way that anyone had ever told me what a monitor was. I didn't know what they did. I didn't understand what they did. I just assumed project manager roles existed, but I'd never been exposed to it. And then from there, clinical trial associates, etc., I had not been told. So it was a massive learning experience. And I got to work on 7 different compounds at one point with studies all over the world. And that was a really big eye-opener for me. Weirdly, actually, if I'm perfectly honest with you, I really hated being behind a desk. At the beginning, I absolutely adored it. I love the project management because I love organization. I love the communication, being quite social, and actually organizing, seeing the science, writing the protocols, being involved in the authoring of the ICF and the informed consent forms. I really enjoyed it, but towards the end, I didn't want to be in it behind a desk anymore. I wanted to actually see real science and be involved in it. And actually, during that year in industry, my mentor, who's now one of the directors at GSK, he told me about the fact that realistically now you need minimum masters. A PhD would put you a foot in the door if I ever wanted to come back into industry. I didn't want to come back originally. In fact, I was very much for just getting into a lab just to have the experience and see what it was like and actually be involved hands-on in the science. I was really passionate about the fact that I wanted to have a go and I wanted to do it myself. So after my year in industry, I came back to complete my 3rd year of my degree, and obviously had left all of my friends behind in the previous year because they'd all graduated the year before. And basically just got involved in the lab. I was working with astrocytes and simulating stroke, and I was exposed to bioengineering for the first time because I was making oxygen probes, which I'd never seen before or been involved in, and it was absolutely fantastic. It spurred me on in my dissertation to make me want to do a PhD. And I'm sure many of you have stories like this where, you know, you did something in the lab or you learn about a specific area and then you were like, I need to get involved. So I then decided to do a PhD. I wanted to be in the lab. I couldn't see myself ever going back to pharma. I didn't want to know. So no options. At the end of my degree, I was applying for PhD positions everywhere and actually ended up staying in the same place in Southampton again. But actually, because of my dissertation, I ended up in bioengineering. And within this, I ended up in a very niche role. I ended up specializing in basophils, which I'm sure many of you know anyway, but they're one of the 2 cells in the body that contain histamine. So they're responsible for allergic reactions. And during my PhD, what I did was we created a lab on a chip diagnostic test that you would put a very small volume of blood into, and it would tell you if you're allergic to a drug or not, or grass pollen or any allergen I wanted to test. So during that time, I got trained in venesection. And to me, this was fantastic. So I knew that my device at any one point was maybe about 15 years away from actually being anywhere near a person. But as time goes on, you realize that I liked taking blood. I enjoyed that part because I was closer to the patients, but knowing I was still 15 years away from doing anything, or at least, you know, getting anywhere near to actually test real subjects, I needed to be further involved. I wanted to help people, but I wanted to be closer to the endpoint. And I think honestly, I didn't have the best experience during my PhD. I'm sure some of you have had issues with supervisors, etc. But during mine, I worked long hours. I enjoyed the long hours. I enjoyed the lab work. I enjoyed presenting my research at conferences. The science was great, and it really satisfied my need for learning. But at the end of my PhD, I knew that I did not want to be in a lab anymore, and I actually turned back to pharma. The best thing about a PhD is it does provide you with that skill set that you can apply to pretty much any position easily. Data analysis, you've got the project management skills. There's no one who can organize yourself better than you at this point in time, because you have self-motivated yourself for 5, 6, 7 years in that research with, you know, little to no support some of the time, you know, most of the time. And so I was 3 years into my PhD. I was in the write-up phase, and I had a year to submit my PhD. And realistically, I knew, based on, well, I know my supervisors, that they were not going to read my work. It was not going to get done quickly, and it would most definitely take the full year to write up. So actually, I didn't complete my PhD until 2019. That was when the corrections were finally submitted. In 2017, in my write-up year, I actually applied to many different positions within pharma, to be anything involved just to get a foot in the door, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I applied for clinical trial associate positions, project manager positions, monitoring positions, anything to try and get that. And there were a lot of rejections, don't get me wrong, because the thing is, you're inexperienced because no one's given you a chance yet. But trust me, it only takes one person to give you a chance, and then that's it. So with me, actually, I found personally to work for big pharma, the best way through is contracting. So I applied for a position as a clinical trial associate through Syneos, and it was actually to work directly at Bristol Myers Squibb in Uxbridge. And the bit that won me over with that one was they were interviewing me for clinical trial associate, and then they said, well, this might be a waste of time. I think you're overqualified, etc. And I was still desperate. I really wanted a job. I wanted to earn money. I wanted to distract myself so I could write up at the weekends. And literally they said, give me an example of something innovative that you've done recently, and anything in your PhD could answer that question. So with interview questions, I think your PhD gives you a very good example of teamwork, data analysis, innovation, etc. And so they actually ended up offering me a junior project manager position at BMS. So rather than starting at CTA and working my way up, which is what technically I should have done, and I know I should have done, I ended up as a project manager, and this essentially meant country level manager. So I was responsible for 4 different countries. It was Belgium, Netherlands, UK, and Ireland. And I was assigned to the oncology team, specifically within lung. And that meant that I was running the clinical trials and actually heading my own team within the company to run 7 to 9 trials at any one point, do the site selection, run the meetings, etc. And a lot of data analysis comes in as well. So it's really useful to have that understanding. After a year of contracting through Syneos, I actually managed to get a permanent position at Bristol Myers Squibb. So it makes it look like I've moved around a lot. I haven't, I promise. But essentially, so I worked at Bristol Myers Squibb for 2 years. So 2017, in October, I started. I vivaed in November of 2018. So I was still doing my lab work at the weekends in order to make things work. I was writing up, and I would basically, the position I took was 2-hour drive each way. So I'd drive 2 hours each way to work 5 days a week. And then on the Thursdays, I'd come back and I'd speak to my supervisor, and we'd go through the work of my write-up. And then I would do lab work during the evenings. And I can't tell you how great lab technicians are, because if it wasn't for my lab tech, I don't think I would have got the extra experiments done in the working day. The thing that drove me to move, the thing that always has kept going, is my curiosity. So I wanted to know and I wanted to understand. So at country level, there were loads of decisions that got made. So you would suddenly be told, okay, your trial's terminated, or we're not going to run it in these countries, or we're not doing it this way, we're doing it somewhere else. And my curiosity here was purely to try and understand why were these decisions being made. At country level, you were kind of the bottom of the food chain. It goes country, global, and then you have the directors above you who are making all the decisions. So I wanted to follow my curiosity and try and find out what was going on. And that essentially is how I ended up as a global trial manager. So again, I am contracting through IQVIA, but I work directly for Novartis. So global trial manager, I'm now writing the protocols at that point, which was great because as site managers at BMS, you were not. So authoring the protocols, authoring the informed consent forms, it gave me a lot more experience, and it also allowed me to be involved in the clinical trial team and actually be involved in those global discussions that I didn't get a look into before. So it just kept following my curiosity. Unfortunately for me, the drug I was working on was actually terminated in December last year. And so because of that, I ended up taking a secondment. And the secondment that I'm currently on is a strategy and operations manager. And this is, I don't think I could have ended up in a better position if I'd actually planned it myself. So the strategy and operations manager is essentially like a director position. So you are involved in the resourcing, you're involved with all of the head of the franchise units, so the head of respiratory, the head of oncology. So all those discussions that I was trying to understand why they happened, I've actually found myself in that position. But the thing is, you know, all of the career choices you make, it may just fall into, you know, they may just fall onto your lap. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And trust me, I must have applied for, well, over 100 jobs to get that global trial manager position at IQVIA because I just did not want to drive 2 hours each way anymore. I wanted to be home-based. So now I'm fully home-based in a position where I can do that. But honestly, keep applying. I can't express enough how much of an advantage a PhD is in the world of pharma. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It seems that your last year of PhD was pretty intense.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me to do it again.
Yeah. So we are a bit behind the time, so I will switch to the other speaker. Thank you, Chloe, again. So Amalia, are you connected?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you, Amalia. If you can stay in the 5 minutes, it would be great. Thank you.
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Amalia and I'm a computational biologist in GSK since 2 months ago. So please be gentle. So I'll give you like a brief introduction about what my career path was. And then I'll talk a bit about what it's like to work at GSK as a computational biologist. So I'm sure you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from Spain, and that's where I did my undergrad and my master's. So my undergrad was in biotechnology, which was a combination between a bit of engineering and a bit of molecular biology, and I collaborated in some synthetic biology projects. Since I wanted to do something more health related, my master was in molecular biomedicine, so more like the molecular basis of disease. But throughout all this, everything was wet lab based. I did some programming courses throughout my undergrad, and I knew I love computers, I like programming, and I wanted to learn for my PhD. So I took 2 plunges for my PhD. First, taking a PhD that had a computational part. So I would be generating my own data sets, but I also have to analyze them, and also moving out of Spain to the UK. So I started my PhD in 2013 in Imperial. It was a PhD using yeast as a model organism to study the relationship between cell size and gene expression. The PhD was 4 years long. I stayed 2 more years as a postdoc trying to get the publications out, and that's when I moved to GSK. So when I was finishing my PhD and starting my postdoc, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I took one, like a career development course that the MRC was offering, and it was really good because it forced you to, basically someone was asking you, okay, what is it you like about your job? And what are the things you like? And what would your new job, how would you want it to be like? And there were 3 or 4 things I knew. I knew I didn't want to be a PI. I knew I liked coding, and I still, even though I didn't want to be a PI, I still enjoyed research, and I wanted to be in contact with science. So with that information, I applied to many different things. So I applied to be a data scientist. I applied for editorial positions. I applied to some postdocs as well. And I also applied to a lot of computational biologist positions because I thought that would kind of tick all the boxes for me. There would be coding, it would still be research, and also my research would have an impact, which is something I really like. When I started applying, I found out that the biggest challenge was translating my experience as a PhD and a postdoc in a way that companies can go and be like, oh yeah, that's really useful. I feel like that's something that we all go through as like academics, like, oh, I don't know how to do anything, or everything I know is like useless or only applies to a tiny organism. So I do encourage people to go to their universities and go to like the CV clinics to be able to translate what you can do so that the company can read your CV and find how you can be useful to them. So yeah, after my postdoc, I joined GSK as a computational biologist. So this scheme shows a bit how in GSK, like computational biologists can be involved in many different types of projects and are scattered throughout the organization. So it's really good because you can, you'll be involved in many different types of data set and answering very different questions. Like, for example, when you're trying to select a target, you'll get like results from a screening and you'll have to decide which one of these genes is more interesting to look at, or can we drag these targets? Then once you know more about the target, you can mine data set to see if is it safe. Can we develop an assay to measure the activity of this target, etc., etc. So there are many different problems that you can be facing, and actually, it's not the day-to-day. At least in my department, it's not that different from a postdoc. You spend most of your time. I do spend a lot of time writing code, analyzing data, and having discussions with people. I think to me, the main difference is the amount of meetings and the amount of emails. When I was a postdoc, I could ignore an email for weeks and there'd be zero consequence. Now I have to reply to all of them. And then a counterpart, as I think Carolina mentioned, is that you're much more accountable for what you do. So if you said that you're going to deliver an analysis on a certain date, then you have to do it because other people's work depend on you. But that's also good because then you know your work is having an impact, even if it's just helping someone design an experiment or helping the drug delivery pipeline go forward. So, and regarding challenges, I think something I found difficult is kind of getting my head around the scale of the operation. Like every project has like tens of people involved in them. Like it's not anymore you and another PhD student from the department next door that are working together. Like suddenly there's like hundreds of people, and there's a very big challenge, I think, as a big organization to keep everyone up to speed to what everyone else is doing. And well, I think I probably spoke for 5 minutes already. So can you go to the next slide? So I encourage everyone, you can apply here. There are positions open. There are always positions open. So I encourage everyone, even if you don't know what you want to do, you don't know if this is a good time or whatever, just apply, have a chat if you have an interview and find out if this is a good fit for you. And if you have any questions or want to know more, you can ask me now, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like, just try to find my name and I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amelia. I think like people will contact you if they want to go in GSK. Thank you so much. So now we'll move to the next speaker, Stephanie. Are you connected? Yeah, great. Yeah, Stephanie.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so I finished my PhD in 2018. It was in biochemistry based on, or looking at the cardiovascular disease, biochemistry of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So I knew that I didn't want to stay in academia. I knew that from the first day of my PhD that I didn't want to stay in academia, and I wanted to be closer to patients. So I think that was something that was always going to be missing in academia for me, just that human contact. So I got my first real job as a clinical research coordinator at Australia's biggest clinical research unit called Nucleus Network. And basically there is where I had my real taste of industry. So this is where I learned everything about clinical research. And it was a really, really steep learning curve, but it was a great year. I worked across lots of different phase 1 and phase 2 studies, mostly in healthy volunteers, and basically just learnt everything that I could about the early stages of clinical research. And then I decided to pack my bags and move to London, and I arrived in London last year. And I was always looking for an alternative because I knew that clinical research wasn't going to be a long-term career for me. But it was a comfortable area and I hadn't learnt a lot yet. So I'd only been in clinical research for a year. And I thought I might like to just stick around for a little bit longer to learn a little bit more. And it was an area that I was comfortable in. And with already moving to London being a big move, I didn't want to challenge myself too much. So I stayed in clinical research, and I was fortunate enough to find a role at St Pancras Clinical Research, and they work with phase 2B and phase 3 studies. So this is where I got to work with actual patients. So whereas my first role in Melbourne was working with healthy volunteers in phase 1 studies, phase 1 and 2, my role for the last year or so was working with actual patients. And this is where I got most satisfaction from, I guess, being able to, I guess, give hope to very, very ill patients. I worked with dementia and Alzheimer's disease patients, and also people with chronic pain. And this was always, something that I thought I wanted to move towards from academia, working with people and helping people. And then I also quickly realized that it's very difficult to work with patients. The role at a clinical research site, the role is very, it's a people management role. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I didn't do a PhD to manage people. So I made a very strategic decision at the start of this year, 2 weeks before the pandemic. I started a new role as an associate medical writer at Open Health. So I've been in that role for just over 3 months now. And medical writing was always something that I was considering right from the moment that I finished my PhD, even during my PhD. I've always been involved in communicating science outside of the PhDs. Obviously, there's publications and conference presentations and all of that sort of thing. But I've always pushed to do extra stuff, extra communication activities outside of that. But along the way, every time I was applying, I wasn't quite right. I never was successful up until this year. And I think that's because I have had a couple of years experience in clinical research in addition to the PhD. I think that is really, really valuable. So at the moment, the role is somewhere, or this particular area is somewhere that I see myself for the long term. It is, for me, the perfect balance between science and helping, improving health outcomes. I'm constantly looking at and exposed to new science, which is so exciting. It's something that clinical research never gave me and was never going to give me. And I'm really excited about the future, my future in medical writing. There's a lot of space for career progression. And I think that for the first time in the past, 10 years or so, it's finally made sense why I did my PhD, because without a PhD, you can't be a medical writer. And it's kind of like in the past where I've questioned why I was doing my PhD, this is probably the first time where I've really thought, wow, this is why I did it. So I guess in terms of any sort of tips that I have for anyone, my biggest tip would be to take the opportunities that are given to you or that are put in front of you. Take everything, just say yes to everything during a PhD, because you just don't know where those opportunities will lead and who you will meet along the way that will be able to help you out along the way. So take every opportunity, and it is okay to not know where you're going to end up. And to take the time to feel out different options. Like you've heard from all the other speakers already, you know, there's a lot of experimenting with what you might think you might enjoy. So take the opportunity and take the time to explore, and hopefully you'll end up in a spot one day that you're really, really enjoying.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. It was really great. And yeah, now we'll move to the next speaker. Yeah, I didn't have to say your name, so Maria, you're up.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Maria Paola Serra, and now I'm going to tell you about my working experience. So if you please go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background about my CV. It's not that different from the other speakers. So I'm from Italy, from this tiny island called Sardinia, and that's where I got my pharmaceutical chemistry and technology degree. And I was offered immediately after a PhD, so I didn't even have to think what to do next. So I was working with cell senescence and aging, focusing on liver. And during my PhD, I was awarded a fellowship that allowed me to spend 1 year abroad. So I went to the CRUK in London. I think then was called LRI. I think now it's part of the CRIC. And for the first time, I was exposed to stem cells. So I really enjoyed that. So then I went back to my original lab to complete my PhD. And this fellowship allowed me to stay other 2 years as a postdoc. So I just stayed there for, I think, a little bit more than a year, tried to wrap up everything. And because I was working with aging, so all my experiments were really long-term experiments. And then I started looking around. So if you can move to the next one, please. So then I came back to London, and I joined the group of Tamir Rashid at King's College London in the Center of Stem Cells and Regenerative Medicine. And I was working with human iPS, and I would try to differentiate them into hepatocytes and improve their functionality. So I started as a research assistant, because in the meantime, I was waiting the outcome of a fellowship. Then I eventually got the fellowship, so I moved into the postdoc position. And in the meantime, I was awarded the Marie Curie fellowship, so I was securing me 3 years in that lab. And then if you click, please. After 3 years in academia, I realized that I didn't want to stay after. And my main consideration were the frustration to have a big project that sometimes it doesn't work as you expected. Sometimes you're stuck, but you have to keep going, because I was funded for that project. And the work-life balance, especially because I was working with stem cells and differentiating them into hepatocyte was taking me like a month. And if something went wrong during that, I had to start it again. So I spent a lot of time, a lot of my weekends splitting cells, and I realized that I didn't want to do it anymore. And then job security, because I was always depending on grants. So I know how stressful it is when you have tight deadlines and you are trying to submit preliminary data asking for funds. So I decided that I didn't want to stay there, and I started looking around again. So I joined AstraZeneca as a senior scientist, and I joined the pathology group. I moved to Cambridge. And basically, I went back working in tissue. That's what I did during my PhD, because I didn't like the stem cells anymore. So I was involved in the preclinical toxicological studies, and I was exposed to really advanced technologies. The first year, I really liked it, because everything that was done manually in academia was done using automated platform. So I was involved in multiplexing, imaging mass cytometry, and automated staining. So I really enjoyed. And then my work-life balance was much better. I had free weekends. Industry doesn't want you to work extra time, or if it happens, you can claim it back. You have a great benefit package. And then what I really like is that you have small individual objectives. So in industry, things are changing very quickly. So if something is not working, you just move on and start another project or another thing. And then you have, at the beginning of the year, so you have to set up your goals. And at the end, you have an end of the year review. So based on what you achieve, and if you achieve all your goals, then you have a bonus. That's something really nice to have. And then if you can click. So I spent a little bit more than 2 years there, but in the last year I started suffering a bit. Main reason is that unfortunately AstraZeneca is located in 6 different sites around Cambridge. There's a plan to all join a new really fancy building, and that's what they promised me when I applied. But so far I stayed more than 2 years and the move didn't happen, and I don't think it won't happen in the next 2 years maybe. So I was relying on the van that was shipping material from one side to the other. So it was very difficult to plan my experiments. And I wasn't engaged as I expected in decision making because I was in the lab. So people at top level were just making decisions. And although I was the one doing the work, I wasn't consulted before. So I didn't like that. And it's not easy to collaborate with people, especially academia. In academia, it's very easy to find a group or a friend or someone that you can just set up experiments together, but that's not possible in industry. So if you go to the next one, so I wasn't really looking, but then LinkedIn is a great platform because I found a job offer at Upcam. And when I look at the description of the role, I thought, oh, that's really suitable for my CV. So I just decided to apply. I didn't have many expectations because this is a non-lab-based role, and I didn't know if I was suitable for it. But so far, I joined in January, and I love it. So at the moment, I'm the research area lead for the immuno-oncology. So I'm still in Cambridge, and this is our fancy building. And we are all together, so that's what I like, and it's really friendly environment. I'm involved in the immuno-oncology strategy, so we are looking at new targets, new technology. In my day-to-day job, I do a lot of antibody data review, so I do a lot of troubleshooting, try to improve protocols, and I need to make sure that our validation is done properly, we have the right controls. And I like that finally I can work closely with customers, and customers are basically people that are in academia and in pharma companies. And it's weird because I was an Upcam customer for the last 10 years, and now I'm there. So I know exactly what being in academia and industry, I know exactly what is missing in the catalog, what I can improve, and what I would like to see. It's really friendly environment. And although now is a very difficult time for everyone, in our company, we are recruiting a lot. And because as you can imagine, with the pandemic, now we want to expand and we want to give the researchers the right tools to study the coronavirus. And I'm really happy to announce that we are recruiting. So there's a position available in my team in the new product development. And we are looking for a research area lead for immunology. So if someone of you wants to have a go, please apply for this role. And if you have experience in immunology, and the bonus is if you have worked with infectious diseases as well, as you can imagine. So I'm leaving here my email address, so feel free to contact me for anything that you want to discuss. And if you have, I'm not here to sponsor Upcam, but if you have any ideas or things that you are looking for that are not in the catalog or issues with antibodies, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it seems that we can have a lot of possibilities because you did first AstraZeneca and now Upcam. That's great. So now we'll move to the next part, so the question and answer session time. So we are a bit late. We are a bit behind the schedule. So I would like to ask if all of the speakers can stay a bit more. And if there is an emergency and one of the speakers needs to leave, we will maybe ask the question that we have in the chat function for them. So is it all right for all the speakers? Good, thanks. Yeah, Chloe, Stephanie, can you put, yeah, thank you. Okay, great, you're all here, perfect. So we will start with the first question. Leah, you said you have a question. Can you ask your question, please, and unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi guys. First of all, thank you so much for all the really good talks and to share all this experience with us. It's really, really nice. I just wanted to ask kind of a panel question because Carolina kind of touched upon it in her talk when she was saying, very often when she was talking with recruiters, they were like kind of laughing at her face because she was putting the priority on the wrong skills for them. So I wanted to know, like, in your experience going from, you know, academia to the private sector, what were the skills that you didn't know you had to develop, or what were the skills that you were told were not as important as they used to be in academia?
Well, I had this thing that I'll list every single conference I've been to. And I'll put a lot of weight on papers and this, and actually in most of industry, the project is a very dynamic place. So they want people that actually have a broad experience and can adapt to be put in a different project very often. And if you're very focused and you find hard to absorb different information, it will be pretty hard for you to interact with different projects. So I'll put a lot of emphasis on my expertise in a very particular thing, rather than say, look, I could change from different jobs and areas of expertise and work with different people and really integrate in a team and do something and kind of generate something useful for that team. And I have that expertise, but they probably value more the teamwork and how you help others or a team to achieve something.
Great, thanks. Any other members of the panel?
Yeah, if I can, I think to me what helped as well was, instead of doing, this was suggested by me, by someone in the career service, instead of doing a chronological CV, do more of a skill-based one, where you say at the beginning, like, teamwork or data analysis, and then you list like 3 or 4 things that you've done that are related. Because especially if it's an industry position, like, what they want to know what you want to do, and you do get carried away with your PhD project because it's your baby, and you want to give everyone all the detail that you can. But a lot of the time, it's not the most important thing you should focus on. You should focus on more like, oh, I can manage project, I can analyze data, and this is everything I can do, rather than, oh, I did my PhD in yeast, which no one cares about.
Yeah, I would like to add that, because now I'm part of the recruitment panel, so every time we screen CVs, sometimes we receive really long cover letter and people are citing all the literature. I mean, they just want to show up that they're really good in the field and they know up to date, but we don't have time to look at all those kind of things. So please make it really short and concise. Don't do any literature review in your cover letter, please.
That's a really good tip. Thanks.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially with pharma, 2 pages is definitely what you want to aim for. Sometimes it's really hard to fit it all on, but yes, publications are great, but list them as in the smallest space as possible. The main things are the fact that you can actually organize yourself, the data analysis, just like everybody else has said. The things that I think I definitely didn't have as an experience before I joined was I've never led a team, because you're so used to being in the lab, you're sole working. It can, I mean, yes, you can work together, but actually leading a team is something that takes a little bit of getting used to.
I think also I'll add to that as well, is that I think very few of us would have any sort of commercial experience during the PhD. So we don't have any appreciation of like budgets, and I mean, apart from, you know, running, you know, ordering reagents and making sure the lab runs on time, you know, when you're working in industry, it's a business. They're there to make profit, whereas academia is not. So I think that's the biggest gap that I'm still trying to fill, you know, that commercial appreciation, because you spend so much time in academia where there's just no exposure to that, because the business doesn't depend on a profit. So if there's any way that you can bridge that gap, or you know, get your head around, you know, the business and the commercial side of things, I think that's yeah, useful.
Can I just also add to that as well? Sorry, we'll tap on. Just about the people skills and about managing teams. I think that a lot of people forget all the transferable skills that you do get during your PhD. You know, you always throw in a summer student or someone to. I think it's important to put that down and say, like, you do have that management skill. You do have project management in the sense that you've managed your own project, your time management. You've managed to reach your deadlines. And so it's important to take note of that. So a lot of the times it's, you were forced to do it, whatever, but you've managed to have the skill. And also nowadays, I think, especially, well, I know at King's, they have the staff development, the research staff development center, with a lot of extra courses you can do now. So I think things like management skills, you can do all these now during your training or during your postdoc, which do help you. So I did a leadership course, even though, I mean, this was already after I've started my business and I have a team now, but I did the leadership course, and that was just really interesting to learn different styles of leadership and how to identify how's the best to get things out of people. So this, I think, will be important for who are applying for jobs and for putting that down as well on your CV.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. So now we will go to the next question. Petya, can you unmute yourself? And I'm going to stop recording from now on.
Yes.